So, Lucy, one thing you mentioned in another interview that I want to start on is that you look back on your journey and you actually said you wish you actually dreamt bigger early on. So, I'm curious, someone listening in who's just starting out in their career or business journey, what would you tell this person?
Go for it. Do you know what I mean? I say exactly that. I think dream bigger. I don't think I realised, and I don't know if it's a female thing that we're self-deprecating or a British thing that we apologise for everything or a class thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm very much come from a working class background that I didn't feel I or deserved that space at the table. Do you know what I mean? Only until more recently, I think maybe even since becoming a mother, maybe I don't know it. There's an empowering thing for me that comes with that, and I don't know, a strength or a confidence. I don't know, but equally, maybe as we grew, like you were saying during COVID, we grew quite a lot, and like a lot of consumer e-commerce businesses grew a lot in that time. And I think for the first time, you have a lot of people in your ear. Oh, this is what your business is worth, and it's terrible that you maybe one needs this, but maybe that is a bit of an external validation of, oh, okay, we're doing something here, which is really bad. You should know that or feel that or have that understanding or self-awareness, but sometimes it does come from an outside voice and you step back and think, okay, I think this is something, I think this could be something. So yeah, from that point I was like, oh, what is the potential here that we can, sorry, I use my hands a lot as well, so I
Oh,
don't
I
know how
do
much we
too.
can cut. My sister actually
Same.
works on our team, and she edited this little clip of together with this Italian music over the top of like me just
That's
talking like
funny.
this all the time. But yeah, just the potential of what we were doing, how unique our journey was. You know, sometimes when you step back and you reflect and appreciate what you're doing. And now I feel like you're a bit more fearless. I'm really proud of what we do. And don't get me wrong, there's still wobbles which we might come to in this conversation, but where you question, but actually really confident in that. And I think sometimes when you're starting off now, if people are listening, that naivety or that confidence, sometimes I have chats with people or a bit mentory things, and I'm thinking, this isn't a great idea what you're doing here. But their
Yeah.
tenacity and their strength, that gets you so far. So even if the thing's not there, I think that oomph delivers a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's so interesting. You're right. Like starting out, I mean, even me, it's like, you're like, oh, I can do everything, like in a good way, because
Yeah,
you don't know the ins and outs of maybe it's like a new product you're building. And, there's always stuff. I'm even sure, you being many years into this, every year there's still something that you're learning that is making you humble again. So it's kind of nice,
definitely.
like you said, if you don't have that passion starting out, then I feel like it's actually going to be even more difficult as the years go by. But what I love so much about your journey, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is like you just followed your passion. And I actually want to take a step even further back because I look at you and I'm like, man, she's such a creative, such a force, so confident the way you speak. I mean, even to have, these bold, I would say like your business and the fashion is very bold. It's different. It's unique. It's not what everyone's doing, and you need the confidence there. So, what do we need to know about your upbringing and maybe your family life or how you were as a child to understand this woman that you are today?
I don't know. People don't normally notice on that. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a really interesting question there. That I do think family or whatever that looks like for you. I'm not saying conventional, but was lovely for me. I come from a loving home, and I think that security in that enables you to go and to fail and to grow and do whatever you want to do because you've always got that secure base to come back to. And I think that's really key now with as a mother or with this younger generation, giving them that confidence and that strength in themselves. I think that's the so important for them. I think it makes you less like I listen to a lot of people about kids on social media and stuff, but do you know what I mean? That confidence, you're less likely to be impressed, you're less likely to get caught up in something or this performative behavior that social was bought or whatever it is. Like I think if the kid is confident and secure, I think it gives I don't know, a strength and a willingness to try. I say if I tried this entrepreneurship and it didn't work, I know I've got that. And now for us, even that sense of community is so key to never
Mm,
fully dress. So again, that, like I said, whatever form that home or that self comes in. I say for us, community is wonderful. That's who we serve. That you feel safe in that space. It's something that I like to apply to staff. And I didn't really realise how unique our way of working, like our culture, our office culture and stuff is, until probably more of late, that you're safe in what you do. I don't care about a mistake that you make. Like, whereas if you come from more of a corporate structure, I think they're quite shocked and nervous, or sometimes there's not an honesty that comes with, because they don't want to tell you they've made a mistake, because in previous positions or in previous workplaces, that's terrible. But no one cares here where we are. Do you know what I mean? And I think once you come from your position's safe, like your job's safe, your progression is safe, so it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Come with an honesty and a work ethic to that, and we all fix that together. So I think we apply that sense of community to all of those, like to my life or to our job, to our customers, to our office culture. So yeah, I suppose very present in my upbringing, that is so core to our values. And like charity work we do a lot of that with NFD. Like, I think if you're honest about your approach, and you do good, and I think maybe it's a slower journey to get there, but it feels authentic to you, and I think then it comes out. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And what I love, and I love that you touched upon how, your corporate culture is like that. Like, you're bringing how you were raised to how you run the business to your business with the community. But what people might not know listening in is you never really had like a corporate background. You, I believe, like, were a waitress, and then you're an aspiring actress. So all of this is like quote unquote new, but tell me more about your aspirations before you fell into Never Fully Dressed, because it was very different, your life at the time.
So yeah, I've actually just started acting classes again, because I just
Did
love it.
you?
But again, I think for me that I love the study of people. I love that interest in the psyche. I think that's why I love acting, just that interpretation, and that I think it's beautiful. Again, similar to what I'm doing now, and actually, the last couple of years, I've come back to protecting those other things that make me me. I think for a lot of, or maybe for the middle part of my journey, I think at the beginning I still used to travel about and I was me, and it wasn't really I mean, it was my job, it was everything I did, but a little bit more hands on. I wasn't thinking, like we said, of that big business. But the middle part of the business, in that growth phase, it was very much, I was never fully dressed. That was my identity. And I think the last couple of years, it used to make me a bit nervous that I'd get bored, or I have all of these other dreams, and I like doing a lot of things, that I needed to protect that creativity or all of those sides of yourself. And then I've noticed now I'm more present at work, or there's more longevity in what I'm doing, because I'm enjoying, I don't know, you bring so many different other sides of yourself, and you're your best version of yourself when you show up there. So I say the things that I'm now revisiting. So acting, I used to love doing before. A lot of charity work I used to do, which again I brought into Never Fully Dressed, when I've wavered a little bit and thought, is this for me? Like fashion, or like, how do I use our voice? How do I use fashion in those things that I love? And I say, if that enables us to help more people, or that's where I would get that interest or the job satisfaction from me, by doing charity projects, or then yeah, I'll bring that in where I can.
I have a few questions there. I love, actually, one thing that stands out is that you were saying, you were a little worried maybe starting the business, or a time in the business where you felt you a little bored. Cause I'm kind of similar to you. I love jumping around. I have so many different interests. This podcast is a function of that. I have my own business, but I love kind of having this like creative piece on the side. But I think what you said was so interesting, because sometimes, like, building a business, and you've been doing it, for how long? It's been quite some time now.
15 years. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So
Yeah.
that's a long time. And the day to day sometimes is boring. Sometimes you need that to just continue. It's a perseverance, and not every day is going to be glamorous. You opening up a store or doing something fun like a photo shoot. But I love what you said, is how you brought in the charity work, and you thought about like different things that you can pull into the business to fulfill yourself. Is there anything else that you did to kind of bring that momentum or that excitement to you? Because 15 years is quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and equally, I think it's worth noting, I do notice that resilience piece is less common nowadays as well. Like, if you've not made it, I had a meeting with someone yesterday. They've been doing it for about a year now, and it's not where they wanted it to be. I'm like, darling, this is going to be quite a few more years until it's where you wanted it to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt maybe about 18 months ago, I felt like I was starting again. Do you know what I mean? That it's going to go like that. But I do think we're in a very immediate society, like that culture or social media where you see these super successful people. You don't really see that middleman anymore. Like that is celebrated, those viral moments are what people now aspire to. But again, even we're actually industry wise, you're a bit anti-viral now because that isn't sustainable, like we've learned. So I think I don't really believe in a magic wand. I do think that resilience and learnings and maybe why our journey's been slower, but equally sustainable. Like we've never had external investment. We've always just run on our own cash flow. We've never raised debt. So even that in itself, you need to develop that discipline. Yeah, longer term, kind of what success looks like. But so I think we don't have that so much now, whether it's in relationships or and neither's right or wrong, but I suppose that is how I grew up on that that has held us in good stead. And I can only talk from my, do you know what I mean, experience there.
Yeah, I love what you said about that. And sometimes, people don't realize like you've been on this journey for 15 years. And like you said, the beginning wasn't always like amazing and high growth and virality. And I think that's a reality of so many successful business owners and why I want to do this podcast to share stories like yours to have more, approachable ways of building a business. Cause sometimes when your expectations are what you see online, you start a business like the woman that you saw the other day and she's like 1 year in and I'm not doing well. And it's like, oh, there's a lot of friends I have now who have very large businesses. They're like, I didn't do anything the first 2 years, which you're like, you have a massive team now. So let's talk about the early days of Never Fully Dressed because it was very different. So where did the inspiration come from and how were you getting it out there early on?
So this was pre-social, so there was no Instagram at the time. There was, but we did have the markets in London, which is quite a culture. So my parents were market traders in London, so I kind of grew up on a shop floor. You have that tradey element about you, and I could sew. I was creative, so I could make something, I could customize. Again, back in the day when I first started, because I didn't come from an actual design background, I could make a big oversized pattern. Everything was one size, which is the complete opposite now to us doing. We do a US 0 to at
Like
least a
24.
24, yeah, 26 in some things as well. But it was the start of our multi-way because if it was a big oversized pattern, if I had a slim woman or a larger woman or an older woman, a younger woman, it was how you make that piece work for you. Do you know what I mean? So I say the start of our style multi-wear videos that we're quite now known for. So that was still a time in London where, yeah, fashion stylists, fashion editors would come to the markets. That's where they got inspiration from. So that was, I remember getting features in a lot of magazines just from being there. So that was good. You didn't need to have that big budget for advertising or anything. What was that from that? I suppose then it was social was that next, which is amazing for people. That is the birth of the bedroom business that you've got that audience at your fingertips that you can target. And if you find your groove on there, you find your people. Now, if you were to start a business, use all of the tools that are at your fingertips. You've got so many routes to market that are free. Do you know what I
I
mean?
know
So
it's so
it's
different.
quite amazing. Yeah, overwhelming I think now for me. I'm getting a bit older with it, but even with AI, do you know what I mean? It's quite amazing those tools you've got. So I think if you use it well and find your right community on there, it's amazing. It's invaluable.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I believe, was it, you even starting this business, was it because your mom was like, Lucy, you need to get a job and make
Yeah.
money? Like, what was the
She
motivation for
still
you to
says
be
that to me
because
now. My mum still works in one of our stores. She is, yeah, she's hard. She could tell you two left feet, and she's tough. So yeah, she was like basically, and actually thinking about it now, as you're saying it, she's probably been quite instrumental in a lot of our pivotal moments. Like even when we got our first store, that was because we used to work from my mum's loft. It was her that was like, get out the loft. Do you know what I mean? You need to get your own premises, and I do think that sense of responsibility from having our own premises, having to pay rent again is a real kickstart. Do you know what I mean? Like really gives you this sense
yes,
of responsibility and makes you have to hustle harder. I think sometimes when things are a bit too comfortable, you've not got that hunger. But it's like you do notice, even say with COVID or when there's times of economic uncertainty. Do you know what I mean? Where like when we had our crash, it was about the time that I started NFD as well. And people have a bit of a reset or they lose their jobs. That's actually when a lot of businesses are born. A lot of entrepreneurship is born at that time because they reconsider or they need to hustle. Do you know what I mean? They've not got another option or whatever it is. But I think that that's quite an exciting time. for
Yes,
entrepreneurs when actually there's a bit of an uncertainty, or they can take a risk or something. So it's quite fun. I mean, if not, you've got to put food on the table for kids, or whatever. Do you know what I mean, whatever your responsibility is. But
totally.
yeah, it's quite fun if from an onlooker if you're watching that space at that time.
It is. I love what you said because it's so true. Like I love how your mom was saying you got to move out and you had the responsibility of rent. And for me, in the beginning of my business, I wasn't paying myself. It felt comfortable, right? It was like smaller. We're selling stuff. We're figuring things out. And shit really hit the fan when we started hiring people. And it's like you said, whether it's kids or a team, you're like, oh, I have to make sure that the business is making a certain amount every month to pay those bills. It's impacting people. I mean, we don't have any stores, but that responsibility, to your point, really makes you thrive, I think. I mean, some people really thrive in that. It's like, all right, like it turns on something in your brain. We're like, let's go. We got to make it work. It's not just a fun passion project anymore. It's
Yeah.
like a real business.
I like what you're saying with employees as well. So it's not just a duty to yourself or like a um I think as you build, I think that does play into that resilience piece. Like often you're something to other people, so you don't. Maybe I'm thinking maybe if it was just myself and I didn't have those
Yeah.
people to be a duty to, I might have given up earlier on. But actually, you know that other people, you are a job and a lifeline to other people as well. So there's a responsibility. I actually remember being in. This was probably a tougher time. It was in LA actually, and we were doing a pop up, and we were decorating the pop up. Do you know what I mean, like getting some furnishings? We were in IKEA, and I was thinking we're going to return all of this anyway at the end of the pop up, so it doesn't matter. But I didn't even like one of the colleagues who I was with was like, "Oh, we." Explaining that, oh, you can buy it and we'll just send it back. And I'm thinking, but we haven't even got the money to buy it in the first place. Or I remember that same trip in LA, I used to set my alarm for 2 in the morning or whatever it was, so the time difference, so I could move money about to pay people. Do you know what I mean? All of those character building pieces, but you did that for other people, or maybe it was to show face, I don't know. But whatever, all of those things cumulatively kept you going, and I say help build that, I don't know, resilience piece.
Yes, 100%. And I'm curious because you guys have been self-funded to this date. Did you ever consider raising money or going down that path? Because you guys have had so many inflection points. And I know we're fast forwarding a bit, like you have many retail stores, your direct to consumer business really grew. Was it ever something you considered, or you're like, you know what, we've made it this far. I want to stay self-funded and in control?
Yeah, I've considered it a few times. And I remember the first time we went like to some offices, really fancy offices in the city, and my friend and I were like dressed up, our outfits were killer, like walking in, people thinking, no, we didn't have a clue what we were talking about, well, but we looked really good.
Yeah.
Um, and then like I've probably sat there with people and then thinking, like just like in a room of middle-aged white men and thinking, actually, I don't know if I need your money. I feel like I had a bit of a feminist part in me. It was like I can do this, or and then just whether we need it. And sometimes when I work back, I don't know, again, you have a bit of a romantic view about what that investment could be, or you think things will be easier, or you think this is actually not about investment. But I don't know if you know Paul Smith, like a British designer. I heard him talk maybe about a year ago, and he's had offers to sell his business loads of times. And he was like, not only would that money not improve my life. Do you know what I mean? Because he was comfortable anyway. He was like, it would actually be detrimental. Do you know what I mean? So, say, like now, if I was to have a big injection of cash into the
Yeah.
business or into my life or whatever it was, actually, what could you do better? Like, what would you different that you can't do now? And nothing really. I think the pace that we're moving at and stuff has actually been key to our success. I say I'm bringing it back to what we can do. And sometimes you learn if you do things in a smaller scale. Like I don't really believe in that magic wand. I say that romantic view of, oh, if someone put £5 million into the business, actually what you might do bigger things and then make
Yeah.
bigger mistakes, or I
Yes.
don't know, I don't know, I don't think. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I think, oh, if we did have that £5 million, I could do that massive marketing campaign and then the business would go like that. But a bit like that antiviral moment that I was talking about, actually, would that be sustainable for us? Would it work? Would, if we're then turning over this amount that year because of that injection, is our structure set up to do that?
Yeah.
So no, you'd then need X amount, or X expertise, which maybe I and the team don't have because we've been playing here for a while. Do you know what I mean? So I just don't know if I believe in that way, unless, for me personally, maybe if someone who I really believed in and liked came in and they were bringing. I've always thought money is the cheapest thing that someone can add to my business.
Yep, I agree.
Maybe that's a privileged way to think, but that's not what we're short for. Do you know what I mean? It would be when I get to a level and I think I'm not sure if I've got the expertise that can for that next growth phase. Maybe it's someone else or a different company or something that I need to bring in rather than the cash. Luckily, I say touch wood, we've always had to be profitable and we're doing well. But and then if you're taking money, do you know what I mean? Anything, any decision, anything seems easier. Do you know what I mean? I totally get that when
Yeah.
you're in a little bit more of a rut, suddenly things aren't as fun. But
Yes.
yeah, that's probably why we've not taken it on investment. And maybe I'm a bit stubborn, or I've not had to answer to anyone to date. So I don't think we'll ever. And I'm just saying this. You never know what's around the corner,
Yeah,
but I don't
100%.
think
Yes.
we're a minority invest kind of company because why? I say if we don't need that little bit of cash, and then I've just got to answer to someone for the sake of that. Do you know what I mean? Instead, I think I'm a bit of an all or nothing kind of person. So maybe that's the route we'll go down.
I love that. And I love how you've been saying throughout the interview, like antiviral, because I've had a few moments in my business where we sold out of a product, our magnesium. And even though it looks
Yeah, I read about
amazing,
this. I need to try it after this.
oh
I
my,
was
I'll
reading
send
about
you
it ahead
some,
of
but
this. Not
the
to...
behind the scenes, like I've heard this for women on my podcast, like, you know, you think it's amazing, but there's actually a lot of work. Like you were saying right now, the infrastructure, like there was so much that we were doing as a team behind the scenes that was, listen, amazing, but it was tough. And like doing that a few times, I'm like, all right, I think the normal growth that you're talking about throughout this past 15 years is just more sustainable. Like again, don't get me wrong. If the business skyrocketed, I would be right there, but
Yeah,
it's not something that I'm like wishing and praying. It's like, I love the sustainable growth because you get to build the infrastructure as you're growing, and it's still hard. It's not like every day you're like, oh, I know exactly what to do, but it's more sustainable, especially if you want to be in the business. Like I don't see myself going away in decades. Like this is something that I'm in. So I love what you're saying. It definitely resonates for
I
sure.
think it makes you a little bit more agile as well because you can move on the go. I've always thought
Yeah.
like if you set your goal here or wherever it is, when you get there, they've moved anyway. So there's no
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
in aiming for that peak because you go over that and there's another hill or whatever it is. So I think that slower path sometimes it gives you a dip. I'm being really worldly here, but do you know what I mean if you take a mountain that way? Do you know what I mean you actually see a different view? It's slower. You see different routes rather than straight to the top because there might be another mountain there anyway that you didn't see before.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'm curious, it seems like, you know, you were doing the markets in London, doing well, you know, obviously it's such a scene, getting some traction. You have, you know, you moved out into your own store and then direct to consumer was big. So it seems like your path to growth was very organic. So how did you kind of fall into, all right, let's start selling online? Then like, what was the next step for you? Cause that I feel like was a big moment maybe for the brand.
We were quite early online. I was quite lucky that my cousin was techie. So before, obviously, Shopify, anything like, he actually now lives in San Fran. He's like in like proper tech. I don't know if he's at Google somewhere. He built a little site for us that enabled us to do that. And then I'd just sit up all night, like uploading. So I kind of know a little bit of everything really, which again is handy, I think, within the business. And we were quite early online. Even during COVID, there's big partners in the UK that we used to supply, and they weren't even really online yet. Or we've got a designer collaboration actually in end of 25, and they've only just launched online now. I'm like, this is mental. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think we were quite early and quite agile. We understood our consumer. We've grown with them. They've very much been part of that journey, and then in that turn, they're so supportive. Really, I do feel like they really root for us. They're on board. And I say it again really early on social, like on Instagram, really early there. So we've grown as the platforms have changed and grown. We've just done that with them, I suppose. We've still and always have been and always will be D2C first. Wholesale's probably 20% of our like turnover. and it won't ever really grow above 25% in the next at least 3 years, 5 years that we've got planned out. So I think, again, that holds us in good stead. So during COVID, when a lot of bigger partners just closed their doors and were having a really rough time, we had that community. We had when we had to absorb a lot of stock to be able to sell to. So I think you have the power, but like when you're D2C, do you know what I mean? Your customers with you, you've got that data, you can, I say, be more agile. You've got especially with social now, that you've got a direct to conversation with them. You have that, which is just invaluable. So yeah.
Yeah. And you've been so, like you said, early in that, like you've had that relationship with the customer early on selling online. Then you were very early on social. And I'm curious, as someone who has really, I feel like you've done such a great job focusing on community. And like you said early when we started, like that has been a base and what fulfills you. What are some of the tips or things that you think has made your business's community really thrive? Because I do feel like you have a very unique relationship with your customers. And like you said, in COVID, it really supported you and you guys grew exponentially.
I think, like anything, I think to have the truth in anything you do. So I think it then becomes not conscious. So you don't have to work to attract. Don't get me wrong, digital marketing is a different thing when you're doing prospecting ads and you're trying to find your consumer. That's a different thing. But I think from an organic place, your community will find you in a way, especially now where you're in algorithms that things can spread in those places, that I think stay true to what you're doing, like, or authentic, be your authentic be your authentic self there, and that community will find you. And I've noticed, even say like we've got or we had a swap shop a few months ago, or if ever I'm standing on our shop floor, I know our brand. Like, that's the most sure of NFD that I ever am, when I'm standing on a shop floor and I'm with customers. I think sometimes if you get a little bit lost, or you're trying to chase what you think is cool that might be not, or yourself, if you go for dinner with people that aren't really your people, or you feel like you've got to go with the school mums to this thing and you're standing there feeling awkward, you come across rude because you're being awkward, or whatever it is, like that's not your thing. Do you know what I mean? Nothing will flourish there. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I think just be really honest with your voice, and we're quite lucky. You'll notice that even in we don't get much backlash on social. You don't get much like many unkind messages or anything. So I know social can be not a nice space for some people, maybe more celebrity than brand. I don't know, but that's supportive because it feels exactly that, a true community. And I suppose it's, again, that thing of it's built organically. Like, I used to do the market. I'm part of that. There's not an elitistness about what we do. So I say COVID was the first time that I was ever present on our social. I wasn't before that. So even then, really realizing how much your voice resonates, or that connection. I think people appreciate that, I suppose.
And I definitely want to talk about that because I was so curious. Like, you were never the face of the brand. And I know I talked to so many entrepreneurs who are like, man, I don't like the social thing. Like, I don't want to be the face of it, or they're a little bit timid. Tell me more. Like, what was a turning point for you? How were you like, all right, I got to go on there? Like, how did all that happen?
Well, COVID, so I couldn't get any models. I couldn't shoot anything. So I was like, we need to list product. So luckily, my husband made me a set in the garden, and I just had to start shooting on myself.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
And even
And
like,
were you
I'm thinking,
nervous or anything? Like, uncomfortable or?
yeah, I never used to. Obviously, this is clearly why I didn't make it as an actress. Like, I wouldn't even answer the phone. Like, I wasn't very good, but not from any. I don't know why. Now, I suppose it's just second nature. I really don't like it. That's what I do. I'm quite confident in that space, as in, I know clothes, I know how to style, I know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's when you're in a talking about something that you're not as sure of that you might become more nervous, but it doesn't really bother me. I think I remember getting ready with my friend, and she's Northern Irish. Her mum's got a thick accent, and we were getting ready to go out one night when we were younger. And her mum was like, I'm not going to attempt to do the accent, but it was like, I don't know why you're bothering doing all this makeup and stuff. Like, no one's looking at you anyway. And I was like, wow, this is so liberating that no one, and it, clearly, like, everyone is so self-involved. Like, no one's looking at you anyway. It just takes all the pressure off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
This is what I look like. This is what I sound
I
like.
know.
You
I
can
know.
unfollow, and it yeah. So no, it's quite liberating when you take that pressure off because you're worrying about things that you're not going to change. So it is what it is. I don't know, but I enjoy it now, I suppose.
It's funny. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people and I mean, even for me, like it, like you were saying, it becomes second nature. Like in the
Yeah,
beginning, you're like, okay, I can do it. Maybe I don't love it, but then you do it enough where you're like, all right, like I'm in the rhythm and it's fine and it's not a big deal. So I like to share that because some people always think like I can't do it, but if you build that muscle, it's not that bad. And I love how you said like it's so liberating. I remember in this podcast when my business, I started it before my business and as a business was growing, I'm like, I don't have time to like wash my hair and like make sure I'm perfect. Like I'm in between meetings jumping on and I used to be like so tough on myself, like dang, like my hair is like this. And then now I'm just like, who freaking cares? Like the fact that you just keep showing up and you enjoy whatever you're doing. It's like you said, it's very liberating. You're like, whatever, who cares?
yeah, it's refreshing. And for me, that again, maybe being a mother, like during 2020 actually was when, and I'm not saying we've never filtered or airbrushed or anything anyway, but maybe even, I think I was doing a story myself and I just put a little casual Paris on. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? This is ridiculous. I actually think the subtle ones are more dangerous than anything. I was like, no, this is what skin looks like. This is what this looks like. So from 2020, we've never filtered anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I say, not that we used to airbrush, do
Sure,
anything
sure.
mad in a way before, but maybe if I looked a bit tired, I might have a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
cheeky. Do you know what I mean? But I just think, I don't want to think, as a mother, do you know what I mean, that my kids are then only looking at people on, let's say, social or TV or wherever it is, and that's not actually true. So they're aspiring to be something that's not actually, doesn't exist. So maybe there's a bit of a what's it called, a sense of duty there, maybe.
I love how you've mentioned a few times like motherhood has really like shifted the way you think about things. And when did you have so you have two little ones, two
I've got
boys?
three.
Three. Oh, so tell me
Yeah.
like what's the age? When did they come into your
Um,
life? I'm curious.
so I've got 7, 6, and 4. So Forrest, actually, my youngest. So my daughter was born like just the week before we went into lockdown. So March 2020.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
she was
Okay,
at that
okay.
time. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, a girl so sweet. And I mean, you've already mentioned a few things, but do you think it kind of shifted the way you look at the business or how you show up as a leader or anything being a mom? I mean, because three young ones, that's quite a bit to also, manage a growing business as well. That's
Yeah, I do quite like to. I say we grew up, do you know what I mean, on a shop floor, like that work ethic is. But I'm one of 5 as well, so maybe I just like a big family. Like now, when I was saying to my husband about having more, he's like, I was like, we want a big family, and he's like, we've got a big family. But to me, do you know what I mean, I
I
like a
love
big
that.
family. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sweet.
But I say we just, all of us were brought up with just that work ethic, I think. So for me now to be able to show that to them and be able to now bring them kind of on that journey. I've got a trip to India in spring, like to a couple of our factories. I'm thinking, oh, maybe my eldest can come if I do it around that school time, or for them to just, if my work enables them to see the world or to experience something as well, I think it's great. But when you're an entrepreneur, listeners and will relate, but your life and your work are a little bit one. So we actually built a set in my garden, so that they're just, whenever we shoot through the summer, they're about, do you know what I mean, they'll be on set quite a lot. They travel, if we're shooting in Europe, like in Ibiza or Mallorca, they'll be there. So they've yeah, they're
I
about, they
love
like
it.
photography, my eldest. So I quite encourage that creativity with them. That we're always at markets, or I think it, I don't know, just gives them again that confidence to be themselves. I think if they can explore what that is.
Yes. And I love the integration piece. And like you said, growing up, like you were on the floor with your parents at the market. Like I love that. I worked at my dad's business. Like at the age of 5, I was like, I had my own little desk and computer and, I pretended like I was working, but I had such a good time and it really builds that work ethic and, resilience. And I love how you've kind of integrated, both parts of your life and get them involved. That's so fun.
Already, my eldest is talking about what car he wants when he passes driving test. I'm like, okay, so we can start you at about, if we do like, I don't know when child labour comes in, but maybe 14, I think is fair to like maybe just start doing some work for me. You do the things, and then we've budgeted it out, so then he can get a proper job at 16, and then he'll be able to buy this I don't know if you call that a banger. I don't know if you can get bangers nowadays, like an old rusty car. I was like, okay, this is what you'll get. But even stuff like that, like if I was able to, I still wouldn't buy him his first car. He would have to
Yeah,
work to
work
that.
for it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think that. I think it's the hustle, the journey bit that you enjoy anyway, and you get that fulfillment from. So, um, he wouldn't. I remember when I first bought my first car. It's different to if someone buys you something. Do you know what I mean? I like that. I think there's a
A
different
lot more
pride to that.
fulfilling.
Or yeah,
I love that. No, 100%. And, going back to just kind of like the growth of the business, you were very early online. And then later on, you started dabbling in retail, at least moving to the US as well. So how did that opportunity come where you're like, all right, we've, locked down Europe. We feel good where we're at. Let's go to the US. Like, how did that opportunity kind of come for you?
I think I don't know if because the guy we have a bit of a boutique agency guy who does our digital marketing. He's from New York actually. Um, I don't know if that's why, but we grew in the US quite organically
Yeah.
anyway. Like it always just trickled along, like pre-COVID. Do you know what I mean? Like he's been working with us for about 10 years, I think. So
Oh, wow.
um, I don't know. I don't know if it is because he's from there and he just knew the market a little bit, or to place ads, or to just test a little bit. But we've grown organically, and then we were quite early to do pop ups as well, like quite. So just used to go somewhere whether we did have an audience, and then it'd be okay, what works there, or let's learn, or then we could actually make money in that pop up, or we haven't got an audience there, and it's actually a bit of a marketing exercise, or to test a market, whatever it is. We'd just go Copenhagen, like New York, for example. And then it was the last one, or the first one actually we did. I think it was the day after my wedding. I went out. Let's go and do my honeymoon just with my colleagues. We went to New York, and that was good timing because we do with one of the charity T-shirts. We do the boob tee, which sometimes things align. Kendall Jenner had just worn it that week when I think we support Mind, like a mental health charity with that. So it was when she was vocal about mental health and stuff as well.
And that was
So
just
that
like
was
organic that
yeah, yeah,
she,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
her stylist, I think, bought it from us. Again, this was quite early. That was 2017, I think. So still influencing wasn't a thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you would gift. Do you know what I mean? There's some really big influencers now that would have just asked, and it almost felt a bit cheeky just to ask for a free top, but then they would post it on social. So I think that whole content creator thing that came about in COVID was later. Um, so we were lucky with our first pop up, got really great press from that. And then the growth was a little bit more strategic. And then it was the last pop up that we did, which is in the store where we're at now. And again, I'm a bit of an energy person. I was like, oh, this is great. Let's make this work. Luckily, things aligned that the landlord was looking for a permanent. He was about to list it like that week for a permanent tenant, and yeah,
And that's
that's
in
how we
LA.
moved in there. And then LA. So I lived in LA when I was 18. I used to live out there a little bit and just always had a bit of an affinity there. And like the sunshine. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
I'm
I
not built
know.
for UK winters. Um, so done the store there. And we're looking in the southern states. Our product does really well in those southern states. So whether that's Miami, Austin, Nashville, something like that, I think is our next stop. So um, that's the next one.
And I'm curious, I mean, I'm sure there's so many stories that might come into mind, but like, what would you say were maybe some of the top challenges for the business? Cause like, I would imagine whether it's growth in retail and then growth internationally, COVID was one, but anything that comes to mind that was very challenging for you or the team that you can kind of talk through.
I mean, there's boring challenges like Brexit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brexit, taxes, duties, like now with Trump maybe putting, I say, all new duties, it just then affects us looking at our supply chain, where we manufacture. So again, it's just boring stuff that actually isn't a challenge of, do you know what I mean? It's just the powers that be changing their mind, or doing something that really, really affects small and medium businesses. I think more so than the big players. They've got that. They're probably in the boardroom of making the decisions anyway. The big guys, but so that's annoying. Again, when logistics is a whole, that's not my strength. Do you know what I mean? That's a whole other minefield, and how you can be clever and where you can move things about. So you can be much more efficient than someone who hasn't got a clue, and that can make a massive difference to your bottom line. HR. HR, I think whether you employ one person or 100 people or 1,000 people, I think it will always be people's biggest challenge. I think because you're dealing with people, with their lives, with different nuances, with someone who thinks completely different to you and thinks that that's right when you're like, how on earth can they think like that? This is right. Do you know what I mean? And managing that and being open to learning that different people can be right, but also trust in your gut that you're thinking, well, that is not right for this business. If you think that's right, fine, but then it's not right here. And managing all of that. We struggled a little bit when we came out of COVID because we had grown quite a lot. I think people expected us to be a much bigger business than what we were. So maybe people were attracted to come to work for us, maybe from bigger corporates, or were expecting X, and we weren't there yet. So we might have looked bigger from the outside, but structurally, say we didn't have bonuses, we didn't have performance reviews, anything like, which now is second nature, and we've worked so hard on being the best employer we could be. Do you know what I mean? What we now offer and everything. But that just wasn't my background. Like I say, my parents had businesses in the 80s where if you turned up, you got paid. If you didn't, you got sacked. Like there was that wasn't a thing then. Do you know what I mean? Like care for your. So so learning that has been tough, especially
Yeah.
because you are the boss and you can take that really personally, and learning that you can't be everything to everyone, and that some people just might not like you, or some people, or you can maybe just not please someone, or whatever it is, and just having sometimes a little bit of a thicker skin to go, okay, that wasn't right, or this is what I learned, or and you're not allowed, really. I still think this, even though I don't think you're allowed to be on a learning journey as the boss, because you are playing with people's lives. So if I'm like, oh, actually, but a few years ago, we probably weren't where we needed to be, and we do much better now, for example, but someone else in that phase where you weren't where you needed to be, that was their everything. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? So you're not allowed that luxury of learning or making mistakes, I don't think, because I say you're playing with people's lives, or those experience really can change them or their direction or their route. So it's a different game. When you go from having, I say pre-COVID, like 10 people in the office, it's that family,
Yeah.
you've grown together, you understand how it all works, and you
Yeah.
wear a lot of hats and whatever. I think when that suddenly moves, and it probably is in every growth phase, it changes. And I do really want to hold on to, our FD thinks it's either corporate or it's just fuddy duddy and airy fairy. And I really try to promote to him that we can make our own path where you have both, where we have this structure, we have growth, you have passion and ambition, but you do also support working parents, and you have this other stuff that I think we can mark out our own culture here, which I think we're doing. So I'm proud of that journey that I've come on, but equally aware of those tough stages. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious. So that is helpful to hear, like up to 10, it's like family. You guys all wear different hats. That definitely makes sense. And then what would you say, like, how big is your team right now that it really is a different kind of I don't want to say culture, but just a different kind of a team?
It's about 45, and then we've got about 5 in the US.
And remote, you guys are all remote or?
No, we all do 4 days in the office. The
Oh, amazing.
the customer service team are remote, because they're on more shift work. Do you know what I mean? So that's all done. We don't have bots or anything. Do you know what I mean? All our customer service is personal. And we've got a lot of lifers within the business. So I think that remains. I think as long as I'm there, that will be there, that culture. And I know as we scale, that's a challenge of mine to protect that. I think a good example is Apple, for example. Like, you still think you're a bit cooler to buy an Apple than a PC. Do you know what I mean? You think it's a little bit boutiquey, or it's a little bit like, and they're the biggest business in the world. So I think to protect that, what do you call it? Like independent kind of niche, small
Like feeling.
outlook. Yeah. As we scale. So that's internally and externally, I think is key to protect that.
I
Yeah.
love that. No, it's super helpful to hear. Like the inflection point between 10 to 45, I'm sure is a completely different ball game.
I think it was actually, sorry, just quick. I think it was actually the shift, that first shift from 10 to 20. That
10
was
to
the biggest
20
to me. Yeah. I actually think I've now found my groove in that
above
expansion
that,
piece.
20 plus.
And again, it's just hard to manage. when it starts getting bigger, where you don't obviously then have that relationship with everyone that's coming in, someone comes in who you don't work with so much, and they then might be a different way of working, and then suddenly need two assistants because they work in a different way. So you go, okay, because you think you trust that, but then that quickly, easily spiders. Whereas if someone I really knew was like, I need an assistant, I'd trust that they definitely do.
It seems like you've really done a good job, like following your intuition and your gut and like what's right. How do you kind of foster that? Cause you're right. Like if you have someone who's like, I need two assistants, someone might be like, yeah, yeah, sure. Okay. You know, like, I don't know. Maybe they do need two assistants, but it seems like maybe through examples like that, like you've really followed your gut and instincts, or how do you kind of manage those situations?
I think you've got to have a trust in your team. I think you have to give them that, and whether they deserve it or not, then rise to it. Do you know what I mean? If you believe the best in someone, if not, they're not right anyway. Um, I trust my upper management. You hope that that culture does filter down, and a little bit like, say, when working from home was a new thing for us. I think if you and it was discussed, do you know what I mean, of whether this is right. But, and I think if you've got to, if the question arises of, are they actually going to do their work at home, or are they going to go and watch TV all day, whatever, like, then you've got a problem with the staff member anyway. It's not, do you know what I mean? So you shouldn't, I
100%.
have that trust in all of my
You're so
team that they
right.
could be in Timbuktu and it's fine. So I think, if there's a problem anyway. Often it's like in life, do you know what I mean? Like, my husband, no, whatever, you'll have a row about the dinner's burnt, whatever. It's not the dinner's burnt. That's not the thing
Yeah.
that you're rowing about. Do you know what I mean? So I think if you've got issues with staff, you know what the root issue is, and that sometimes you need to just actually, I heard it was, what's his name, Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, talking the other day. Do you know what I mean? I think he was saying earlier on in his career, like, lost a lot of money and stuff because he just wasn't very good at having those difficult conversations
Mm,
about, like, when
hmm.
something isn't right or a staff member isn't working. Like, it's not good when someone feels they're not doing well as well. That's equally damaging for both of you. So I think you think, like, being a bit cowardly, you think that's being kinder to that person by not having that conversation, but actually you might be hindering them for thinking, okay, this place is not right for me, this workplace, or I'm going to go and find another job or another career or work somewhere else. Actually, you're hindering them from being able to live out their potential. Do you know what I mean? By you being cowardly and not having that chat, because someone's not really going to say, "Oh, I don't want my job anymore." Do you know what I mean? But if you come to that honestly, actually, that could be beneficial to both of you. So don't be nervous, or don't shy away from those conversations, because you could be being kinder. Do you know what I mean? Like, clarity is kindness. Do you know what
Oh,
I mean? You're
yes.
being much it's much better for the situation. Much easier said than done. Do you know what I mean? And
I
equally have
know.
those conversations first thing, because otherwise your day's hell and it's not fun. So it's all easier said than done, but
It's so important. Yeah, but I love what you said. Clarity is kind. I have a friend that reminds me every time I'm in those moments where I'm like, all right, I'm about to have a tough conversation. She's like, remember, clarity is kind. I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's so important. So I'm glad you brought that up in like all aspects of business and in life. Like
yeah.
now it's like, if I can be clear and kind across the board, it's like the best thing ever.
I
So
think we're in this weird. Maybe it's because people are a bit insecure, or they're quite offended quite easily. I don't know, but people are nervous to say something, or that I disagree, or whatever it is. Or you, like, nowadays you can't even say, like, "Oh, I just don't." If you invited me for dinner, no, I don't want to go. Like, you feel like
yeah,
you've got to be think of a different way. No, just be. Do you know what I mean? Be really honest, and I like you, and I always say to my team, like, if I'm calling you out on something, or if I'm giving you feedback or whatever, it's because I really care about you. I would worry more if I wasn't doing any of that, because either I don't care about your progress, or I'm nervous to talk to you because I'm worried you're, like, of whatever reason, and that's just not a good relationship. I think if you can be like that, I think really value those staff that you can be direct with, and there's a trust in that relationship.
I was going to say, even when you were starting out, like the importance of trust and security. So you hope you build that foundation. So when you have those clear moments, that it's okay because they know you love them, they know the trust. So I
And you
think
want
all
someone
of
to be
that.
able to have that to you. I don't want people to think they couldn't tell me the truth, because then that would make me really worried. I think if someone's just agreeing with me, or telling me or not telling me something that I don't want to hear, that would make me really question that relationship, like, of with my staff, or yeah, whatever that dynamic is.
No, oh my gosh, I love it. I feel like I could talk about this for hours. But Lucy, I'm so curious. Like, what are you excited about? Whether it's I know we're nearing the end of the year, whether it's for you or the business or a new initiative, like what is getting you excited?
Our 25 is amazing. Like I
Ooh,
say,
I
we've
can't
never
wait.
been this organized before, so
I love it.
really excited. Like the product is amazing. So the product excites me more than anything. I think that's the base. When the product's good, everyone's job is much easier. Do you know what I mean? You can sell it easier, you shoot it easier. And for me, again, personally, like protecting those other things that I love. So really enjoying the journey, the process of Never Fully Dressed, using my time, protecting my time. Do you know what I mean? Using that wisely and to the best of my ability, like not having team around me that can do all of those things that aren't my strengths. But yeah, the calendar looks really good. I say those southern states, the US is really growing for us. Like we've launched with a few good partners. We've launched new product areas this year, which we've done really well. So gym is actually coming out in about a week, but the
Oh,
nightwear
amazing.
launched last week. Night with like pajamas and stuff were brilliant for us. Swim. So really just building like for us now how we go from that within that next stage of growth. I'm doing some work on what that kind of I'm at skeletal phase, but how do we, whether it's new product areas or growth within a certain area, kind of being strategic with that. But yeah, the product's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Well, Lucy, this was such a blast. So great meeting the face behind a brand that I admire so much, but you're amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening.